Great to have you here.
Dobré ráno. Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
Lovely. So look, when I read Chief Diversity Officer, Silke, it reminded me about my very often situation with my parents when I say, I am Chief Corporate Officer, Mom, and my mom is like, what the hell is this? What exactly you do? So do you have the same problem? And what is your role about? What do you do in your job?
Actually, I like the title Chief Diversity Officer quite a lot. I tell you, there was a time, there was a whole inflation, and everybody created super fancy titles with chief something. And so when I was offered this role, I was so happy because finally I'm a chief as well. And I think we women also deserve to be chiefs. As a Chief Diversity Officer, of course, it's my team and I, we define the strategy for inclusion and diversity at PMI. We look at where we are still have areas for improvement, and we always find some, unfortunately, probably. And it's our task. I think a lot of Chief Diversity Officer role is actually external and internal communication, because a lot of what we do is talking to our own employees, but also having discussions like today, with other companies, what they are doing, with people in general about where the problems are when it comes to inclusion and diversity. And then, of course, a big element is to convince our leadership about all the things we want them to do and to drive and to get the support from them and in order to increase inclusion and diversity at PMI.
Great. No, it's really a great combination then, because you can speak a little more strategically from the perspective of what you advise, and then Andrea can take us back locally to how you bring it to life, so if it really works. But before we go there, Silke, so you really have the great picture, because you see the trends on these issues, you look globally on the things, being German now, I think living in Switzerland, but really having the obviously the global agenda from this perspective. So what are the latest trends globally, but also in Europe? What do you see in the equal pay, but also the diversity itself?
Yeah, I think Elke before also mentioned the data from the World Economic Forum, where actually Europe is shortly behind the US. And I think on a piece of paper, Europe looks pretty good. And I think we have a lot of things achieved, especially in Europe, in terms of, and that's what the World Economic Forum is actually measuring, having access to education. And you are doing super well here in Czech. Having access to health. I think we are also doing very good. But for me, it's always a little bit like, I'm not sure whether everybody's familiar with Maslow's pyramid. So it's like, first you want to eat. So we have this access to education, and we have this access to, to go to a hospital and have a decent birth, so to speak. But when it comes to real equal opportunities, I think that Europe in general, and I'm not even sure whether Czech is so much different than Germany or Switzerland for that matter. It's like there is still a very traditional role modeling, and that's why I loved the Israel ambassador so much before. It's like it's this pressure that women have to stay at home and have to take care of the children, which comes, and in one of the questions this was raised, comes from women equally as it comes from men. And I think this traditional role modeling, I think, is really keeping us back, because, no matter what you do, when you go 3 years on maternity leave, these are 3 years you miss in your career. So it will take time before you pick up again. That's why, we are doing this equal salary certification to make sure, at least for the same jobs, women and men are paid the same, which is absolutely the basics. But in terms of being promoted and being able to get to the top, I think that's where we still have a long way to go in Europe. We are better than Asia, though. It's like to admit we are better than Asia, so there's also good news in here. But still, I think it's not where we want to be.
So it's work to do. There is a sustainable job of the chief diversity officer,
is
definitely, because there is a lot of work to be done. But you did also a lot of work in Philip Morris to actually get where you are, to get to the certification, and not only. So do you have anything what you would really share in this room, like this is what we do, this is what really works, or this is what we tried and it didn't work? So from the really like the cookbook perspective.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure how many lawyers are in the room. So I think one of the things which worked really, really well for us was that we have what we call aspirational targets, not quotas, aspirational targets for women in management roles, and as of this year, in senior roles. And we actually have a target that by 2025, we want to have 35% of women in senior roles. And what works well is if you give individual targets. So it's not a company target and everybody is relying on the other one to achieve it, but it's really every people manager, they have their own target and they know exactly how many women they have to increase in their team in order to make the overall target. And actually it's, their incentive at the year end is based on whether they achieve these targets. And I'm a big believer in what gets measured gets done. And I think that has worked really well for us as a company, because also it brought this into everybody's awareness. It's like everybody can see what they have to do in order to achieve the target. And the other thing also related to measurement is that actually, and we touched upon it before, is like how do we get men also into the discussion? So what we truly believe is that we have to make this a topic of inclusion and broaden it. Because if we only talk about women, honestly, you also get a kind of gender fatigue at one point in time. So in theory, men are suffering from a toxic male culture as much as women do. And that's, I think, so we are currently focusing a lot on how to drive an inclusive culture where everybody is treated with respect and where everybody can be heard and is listened to. And we are measuring this inclusion. And again, it's part of our SMT's targets, of our senior management targets, to increase how inclusive the culture is in their respective department. And I think through this, we really hope, because we all agree, we cannot do it without men. So that's how we hope to get more men into the discussion.
To be engaged, which was also the question. There is a great advice. So how do you measure inclusion? That's amazing, because those soft things are always much more difficult to measure and put on the scorecard. We speak about profit, that's easy to measure. But what about the inclusion?
Yes, we actually did with a business school in Lausanne, IMD, we did a 1-year-long research project, and as a result, we are now using something which is called Inclusion Net Promoter Score. So I'm not sure whether everybody is familiar with the Net Promoter Score, but it's used a lot also in direct customer business. Usually when you go on a website, most cases you get a questionnaire afterwards these days when you buy something, where somebody asks you how likely are you to recommend this product or this website. So I'm sure you have seen this. And what we are asking is how likely are you to recommend PMI as an inclusive employer for families and friends from underrepresented groups. And we started measuring this last year, and we can clearly see that those who are members of an underrepresented group, even women because of their gender or people with disability, they have a significantly lower inclusion net promoter score than those who are not part of an underrepresented group. And this clearly shows that women, members of LGBTQ+, people with disability, they don't feel as included as the others. And so our target going forward is to bridge the gap, to make sure that people from underrepresented group feel as included in our company as all the others do.
So building this sense of belonging, which
Yes.
is so important for people. Health, well-being, and then performance. It is
Yes.
all linked together.
Yes. Feel the joy of belonging is our topic.
Yeah.
I think.
So you touched a little this not targets but ambitions related to the equal representation. That goes, I agree with you, with men and women. I have teams in our business where they are dominated by women.
Yeah.
Yes, and then we are also looking for diversity there. But I have experience also similar with this, like the setting the ambition. And I remember when we launched it in our business in Asahi across Europe, there was a lot of fear. The majority of our ExCom members were male, so usually one or max two women in the team. And there was a lot of fear because the reaction was, but to achieve it, I have to leave, or my colleague have to leave. So how we manage it? And I realized that it is so important that we really create solution together because there is some pipeline. It's not about that you will be replaced, you will have to leave. There are other opportunities. You can be promoted. This is really, this has to work as a big mechanism all together, including the talent management, to see for people, no, this is not about that you will be replaced because we want women or men in the room.
But again, we touched on it with some of the speakers before. It's like, that's where I'm really getting angry. I sometimes have women coming and saying, look, I really fear, and my colleagues say that I get this job because I'm a woman and because we have these targets. And I'm saying, no, you should have got this job 3 years ago. And only because we have targets in place, that's the reason why you get it now. So it's not like nobody gets a role just because she is a woman or he is a man. But I think it's really important that the way promotions were done in the past and all this unconscious bias which we know is existing out there is preventing women from getting promoted. And with those clear aspirational targets, we make sure that there's an equal playing field.
And it's very important to encourage women because I see that it's about promotion, it's about the salaries. So get to the salary you really deserve and you should have. Yeah. You have to ask for it. So let's go and ask for it. I think this is what also was mentioned here, that the level of activism in our culture is relatively low. So we are active to work for others and help others, but very often we are actually very inactive to help us. How do you see it in your cluster, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, Andrea? So how all the ideas and possible measures are implemented locally and how it looks?
It works perfectly. Again, it's very important to say that it's not a quota and nobody gets a job because she's female or he is a man, or diversity goes also beyond male and female. Yes, it's education, geography, and some other elements. So we don't apply that, but we really pay attention so that there is no bias. Now, how it works, I think this is not the first time I am here, and we all know that we are a proof or a stamp of the fact that it works. Yes, and Philip Morris in Czech Republic, again, just to remind us, I think we were the first company to get the equal salary certificate, which again goes much beyond salaries, because what Silke mentioned is we can start measuring how many women we have in the organization, but very often the companies are exposed to a measure how many women there are in the top management or leadership team. If you look into that in isolation, I think it's an optic which will never work, because you need to have what Silke mentioned, talent management, equal opportunities to grow, equal opportunities to learn and go for a training, educate yourself. You have to have equal opportunities, and it was mentioned also here, and I am a mother of 2 sons, and also I was strongly supported by my husband taking care of the kids. I think, all these elements need to be put into, as you said, cookbook, into the recipe. And then when you have the good recipe, you have the right ingredients, the meal is going to be excellent. So I am really very happy, and I should and I would like to work as an inspiration for other organizations, corporations, and companies that it really works, and it's actually for the benefit. It's joyful.
Joy of belonging.
Joy of belonging, because it makes the team more versatile. Mm-hmm. It makes it more fun. And I think we also increase the chances of making the business much more successful. Yeah. We don't necessarily make it easier. And it was already said here as well, that I think you said it, or I don't know, somebody on this podium already, it's not that it's a shortcut and you are making things easier when you go for really diversity. We have 9 nationalities, for example, in Czech Republic, 9 nationalities, which I think is pretty respectable. We have, we are measuring all the other elements of diversity, female, more than 40% in leadership. It's not easy. But again, to emphasize joy of belonging, it's much more fun, it's much more pleasant, and it makes us really maximizes our chances to be much more successful in the external world. And that's very important element, because why are we more successful? Because even in this room, nowhere in the world people are the same. We are all very different. So to address the needs of differences which are out there, we need to have a sourcing of those differences in views inside. So I'm a big believer, and I am very happy that we are a stamp of the fact that it can work.
Yeah, and it's great really to hear this from you, because you also spoke last time on the conference really about that if you want to see the change, you should be co-pilot, to really drive this change. I think it's also your motto, because this is really about the active approach and driving it. But back what you mentioned, so you spoke about the certification. We also did it now in Plzeňský Prázdroj.
I heard about it. Congratulations.
Thank you. And I had a discussions with my colleague in the local business, and what they told me is like it's not about of the process or having the paper, but it was such a cute exercise for everybody internally to start speaking about it, to understand it, and it's much broader. And it doesn't matter if it is this certification, that, but it's really you put it on the agenda in the way how we usually do other topics. You do economic audits, you do so, and you really take it seriously, and you have it at the same level of importance.
Absolutely, because the whole exercise is done, and you mentioned financial audit, it's done by the BPWCR, which are auditors, and they are super serious people. Yes. When they come for financial audit, we all know that they don't take any shortcuts, they don't sacrifice anything, they turn every stone twice, yes? So, and they have the same approach actually when they are looking into these matters. And it's, first they look at the numbers, so salaries and some other elements. Then they look at processes, because processes facilitate those numbers, should facilitate, but they go as deep as organizing focus discussion groups with the employees. And that's the proof of the pudding, I think, that if there was something fishy, something where the two things would not be matching, so the numbers, the processes, it's not a comparse, yes? They choose the people, and people can apply who wants to go there. So it's a true feedback session where exactly everything is being discussed: the maternity leave, the paternity leave, education, chances of progressing in the career, salaries, remuneration, etc. So it's really wide thing. And then the paper is a stamp of it as well. But every time when we have the audit, it's such a enriching cultural exercise, actually, because the topics are again put on the table. We can discuss them, and we can make a plan going forward. So it does change the mindset and the approach we have to these elements. So I recommend, and I'm happy that you've done it.
Yeah. So, and when we speak about all these topics, if I think about the leadership itself, it has evolved so significantly because the world has evolved. So a few years ago, we were both sitting in the ExCom, and the agenda and the topics we were speaking about in the board were so different. Today, with all the issues and all the challenges, we speak about environment, sustainability, we spoke about mental health, we spoke about the inclusion, we spoke about equality. So how leaders can actually transform, what we can do in the organizations, and probably this is also, Silke, on your agenda. So how to help leaders to become these purpose-led leaders of the future. It's not easy. We can't blame anybody not feeling ready, comfortable. It doesn't go. You don't wake up as a different person, able to manage all these new challenges. What to do with this?
Yeah, it's a real challenge, honestly. And sometimes I feel, especially for managers, is like, everything which comes on their plate, is a lot. But I think, especially when it comes to our more senior managers, I think there is, what we are always recommending is that it's be curious. We ask people to be sponsors of our employee resource groups. We ask them to attend events. It's about having reverse mentoring. And we discussed it yesterday again. It's so important that you have coffee chats or lunch with people outside of your in-group. So take somebody from a different group, ask somebody who's struggling with mental health, and see like, what are the topics, what can you do, where can you help? And I think that is the most important. I can't force everybody to read the relevant literature all the time, but talking to those people from diverse groups, I think that's the most important, I feel.
Right. And also sometimes what I feel personally is that it just be human being. It's also okay to say, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable, I have my stereotypes, because that makes us humans and that helps us all to grow together, because there is nobody who knows everything. There's nobody who would be perfect in this area. So how we can help each other, also through recognizing it is okay not to be perfect.
Yeah. Very important.
And there is also one element which I believe is very important, walk the talk, but also when we are in the positions of leaders, we also have to be realistic. It's not a one-man show. So what is truly important is when we work across, for example, I work across the 3 countries, we as leadership team, we need to be on the same line, we need to understand it, we need to want it, and we need to walk the talk so that really we maximize the chances that, we are not somewhere at the front and the team, the rest of the organization is somewhere completely different place. If we want to make progress, we have to go together, and that's super important. Walk the talk, but walk it together. And yes, maybe there are not always good days, so somebody gives you a hand and walks with you. Somewhere you don't know because you are walking blind, then somebody else guides you. But very important is to go in the same direction and to go together.
Super. There are nice questions in the application, so let's use this short time to go through them. There is, and Andrea, probably for you, because you moved a lot within your career from country to country, so asking about how does it work in the Philip Morris, the challenge of the changing place, moving to different countries, especially when it comes to moving with a family. So how do you manage it from your personal experience?
So. Gradually, step by step. Look, it's already very difficult when you are single and you are, I remember I grew up in the Tatras, I went to university in Bratislava. It was already difficult for one person, single one. So imagine that you are moving with your husband, you are moving. The first move we did when Alex was very little, he was 1 year old. So, and it's still sort of easier. Yes, but then we got 2 kids, and then the school starts, and then you want to create somehow continuity for children. Yes, because we adults, it's a little bit of more pragmatic discussion. Do we go? We don't go. Okay, fine. It's going to be there will be difficult moments, but we know why we are doing it. But for the kids, it's really a challenge because we didn't want, and I don't think anybody wants to completely unroot them and disorient them so that they know whether they are living in Switzerland or Czech Republic or Slovakia. So it requires a special effort. But again, in my company, in Philip Morris, I got a lot of support with that. So, for example, what worked very well for us was that we managed from the moment day 1 at school, the kids are having the same path of education. So we started with international American and we didn't change it. So we were always looking for a school which was a part of the same network, so of the same approach. So they changed schools, but at least the system was somehow similar to the previous one. And then, it's the team of 4 who need to make it work. And every day has its challenges, but if you take it from a positive side, actually it's an excellent opportunity to expose and to give the opportunity to kids, not only to learn languages, but to be exposed to different cultures, different environments. You know, when you are in Switzerland, you do sport. When you are in Czech Republic, you can go for culture. So different benefits in different countries. So at the end of the day, it's a great experience. But it's requires work. It doesn't happen automatically.
No, thank you very much for sharing. So with that, ladies, our time is over. We could speak longer, but thank you very much for coming and sharing.